Hello everyone and welcome to the first official episode of Bucs Insider Live. This is a new franchise with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and we're going to begin our journey by recapping the 4 weeks of the preseason. The Bucs come into the season with high expectations but first need to assess the talent in the preseason in order to get their depth chart right. To begin with the first transaction in the preseason, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers signed former Miami Dolphin quarterback David Fales. In signing David Fales, the Buccaneers had to release Ryan Griffin, who was a 54 overall, in order to make room for David Fales to be on the roster. With this signing, David Fales should push Jameis Winston to work a little bit more harder. We also signed defensive tackle Stevie. The Buccaneers on this roster only had one defensive tackle, so adding another one doesn't hurt at all. Taking a look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers preseason depth chart. The notable change to this depth chart is that Breshad Perriman is playing on the outside receiver position while Chris Goodwin will play in the slot. After going through training camp, the Buccaneers coaching staff felt that Chris Goodwin would fit better in the slot and Perriman would fit better on the outside receiver position. Mike Evans is still your number one receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The defense should be a focal point for this Buccaneers team this year. They have Vernon Hargreaves, Ndamukong Suh, Sean Murphy-Bunting, Mike Edwards, Levante David, Devin White. They are loaded on the defensive side of the ball and they should have a good year playing defense. The Buccaneers do play in one of the more tougher divisions with the Saints, Falcons, and Panthers. They have to play twice a year, so defense is going to be a main focal point for this team this year. Moving on, let's recap the first game of the preseason. No highlights here in this game as we had trouble getting the footage from this game played on Thursday. But the Buccaneers did lose this one in a low-scoring matchup, 14-17. The starting offensive unit had a great first drive, putting up a touchdown, but on the defensive side, they didn't really do as good as the offense. They gave up about 2 touchdowns while they were in the first quarter. Although the Buccaneers had a greater time of possession, it did not lead to them winning the game. Now let's get into a more in-depth level with the quarterback stats. Both David Fales and Jameis Winston had a passing touchdown on the day. Although Jameis Winston is your starting quarterback currently, David Fales could possibly overtake that and become the starting quarterback. Moving on to the rushing stats, Ronald Jones had the most attempt but tied second in rushing yards with Andre Ellington with 19. Peyton Barber had 3 carries for 27 yards while Son Wilson had 2 carries for 20 yards. Not too bad of rushing stats by that running back committee there. Let's look at the receivers now. The quarterbacks did a good job of spreading the ball around and about 3 quarterbacks played this first preseason game. The Tampa Bay offensive focus is to run the ball and then set it up with a play action. 3 sacks were allowed in this game, given up by Smith, Bailey, and Benoit. We have to keep an eye on those guys as they are on a possible cut list. Although the first string team defense struggled, the second string team defense picked up and improved off where the first team left off. The Steelers only scored 17 points, but unfortunately the Buccaneers only scored 14. That was a definite victory for the Buccaneers, but they were not able to capitalize off their defense and put points up on the board. Ryan Smith, who was fighting for a cornerback job, had 1.5 sacks, 5 total tackles, and 2 solo tackles. An impressive debut in his preseason performance. After that game, we were met by sports reporter Taylor Bennett, and she noticed that our pass rush was ferocious this week, but our offense needed to do some work and putting points up on the board. She asked us this question: which side of the ball needed the most improvement this preseason? And Bruce Arians responded with the offense. Bruce Arians have spent days and nights in his offense trying to construct the perfect offensive game plan, and hopefully it comes together in this regular season upcoming. Then we had DeMar Dotson, our best offensive lineman and a veteran on this team, approach us with mentoring Alex Kappa, a rookie right guard. Alex Kappa has high potential and hopefully playing right beside DeMar Dotson could lead to some great things for him in the future. With Dotson being his mentor, we wanted to work on run blocking with Alex Kappa. It's not a weak area, but he could definitely improve there. We also told Damar to work on his finesse run blocking so that way Alex Kappa could be able to run to the outside and seal off that edge blocker so Peyton Barber, Ronald Jones, or Son Wilson could get around the edge and pick up a couple first downs. This was a great thing to see, Damar Dotz taking rookie under his wing and teaching him the ropes. But coming up is the second game of the preseason, and it is against the Miami Dolphins. The first team defense struggled in this game as well as Kenyon Drake breaks off a 47-yard rushing touchdown to give the Dolphins a 14-point lead. Poor containment and bad tackling will be the downfall for the Buccaneers defense if they cannot get it together. Nor the first string or the second team defense performed well in this game as Jakeem Grant goes over Jamal Dean and just mosses him for another 7 points. The one bright spot for the defense this game is this safety in the end zone. Finally, they get on the board, making the game 14-2. With the starters playing a little bit more than they did in the first game, the Buccaneers starters are still in. Levante David forces a nasty hit on Kenyon Drake and forces a fumble as well, and the Buccaneers are able to recover. On a side note, the highlights are out of order, but Fitzpatrick goes deep and throws a pick right to Stewart, our strong safety, and he was a star breakout player in the preseason, and you're going to see that upcoming here in the next couple of games. Not only does Stewart have one pick, but he now has 2 interceptions in the preseason game, and he may take this one back to the house, but is ultimately tackled at around the 10-yard line. Although the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense did struggle, there were a couple bright spots in this game. Let's turn our focus to the offense now. Sean Wilson breaks off a huge run and gets past midfield into Dolphins territory. With the Bucs being in scoring position, they could trim this lead down, and they definitely do that here with Ronald Jones going untouched into the end zone, making the game 31-24. But let's go all the way back to the second quarter with about less than a minute remaining. Jameis Winston in the pocket, scanning for a receiver, and throws a pick to Xavier Howard. An amazing grab by Howard there as Mike Evans was not able to break that one up. Winston again with the snap, rolls out to his left, trying to find some yards, dives and loses the ball, picked up by Raekwon McMillan, and he's going to take this one back to the house for another Miami Dolphins touchdown. Winston has to do a better job of protecting the football this season if he wants to remain the starting quarterback. On the 3rd and 5, he throws another interception intended for Chris Goodwin, but it is picked off by Rashad Jones, I believe. No, excuse me, that is Eric Rowe, the former Chiefs cornerback. Winston finally having some success here and some chemistry with his teammates, find his tight end Braid, and he is going to walk his way right into the end zone for a 53-yard passing touchdown. Winston again would lead this Tampa Bay Bucs offense to the red zone. Faced with a 2nd and 12, Winston dropping back, finds Mike Evans, probably his favorite receiver on the out route, and that is a great pass by Winston, a great catch by Mike Evans, and that'll be all for the game. The Miami Dolphins end up taking that game from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they fall to 0-2 on the preseason. Although it was a rough day passing, the run game led the way with Sean Wilson with 6 attempts and 81 yards. The same guys who allowed a sack in the first game gave up another sack in the second game. Nothing too spectacular about the defense aside from Stewart's 2 interceptions that he had on the day. That was a key play of the game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but unfortunately they end up losing this preseason game. Again, time of possession does not matter for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as they lost 38-24. So after that game, Damar Dotson came and approached Bruce Arians again, talking about Alex Kappa performance and how he didn't give up a sack. So Alex Kappa gets a +3 awareness. Let's move on to the third game of the preseason where we are taking on the star-studded Cleveland Browns, and that is a great catch by Watson there from Jameis Winston. This was another bad game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but the running back team led the way once more. That is Ronald Jones II breaking out a 30-plus rushing yard attempt there. None of the quarterbacks looked impressive in this game, but this is Ronald Jones II again, breaking off another huge run, making his way into Browns territory. Jameis Winston did struggle when the Browns sent pressure, and as you can see there, he throws an interception right in his own territory. You don't want to do that if you're a starting quarterback in the NFL. You have to take care of the ball. The Browns' first offense was pretty good, but this is Stewart again, the strong safety, making a name for himself, getting his third interception in 3 games. That is a way to show out and remain on this roster. As I said earlier, the quarterbacks did struggle. Jameis Winston and Blaine Gabbert threw a combined 3 interceptions in this game. The receivers made a lot of impressive catches as the throws from the quarterbacks were not accurate at all in this matchup. The Bucs offensive line gave up 6 sacks in total in 1 game. It was just a disappointing performance, and the Buccaneers couldn't get anything going. They lose this one 24-3. In their last preseason game, the Buccaneers will travel to Texas to take on the Dallas Cowboys, and that is Sean Wilson with another amazing run, but unfortunately he gets hurt on this play with a bruised sternum. Luckily for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he was able to return, but look at this pick here. This is Mike Edwards, the free safety for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he picks this off, takes it to the house, but that is a good way to make your name for yourself again, just like Stewart. The Buccaneers get into the end zone here, and they did a better job of putting points up on the board and playing defense this matchup. David Fells played a majority of this game, and we really needed to see what the backups had. Ronald Jones II scores another rushing touchdown in this preseason showdown. The running back group may be the strongest on our team so far, as David Fells throws a pick right to Heap, and he is going to take this one all the way inside the 30-yard line. But getting back to that running back position group, they have played amazing in this preseason, and I cannot stress enough that they are going to be relied on heavily when we hit the regular season. But a beautiful pass thrown by David Fells to his man, Cameron Braith, for a touchdown, and that is going to give 7 points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that is another 7 points, and that is Watson, who is another guy that impressed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coaching staff. A lot more scoring this game, but the Buccaneers still ended up with an L. Their defense just couldn't hold on, and I wouldn't blame them too much for that because the Cowboys had a lot of their starters still playing in the 3rd and even the 4th quarter. The Buccaneers coaching staff was really impressed with this team as a whole, and hopefully it can translate to more wins in the regular season. The defense had 1 or 2 games where they looked good, but the offense took this one where they put up over 20 points in this matchup, but it was still not enough to beat the Dallas Cowboys. But again, we have to go back and look at who played for the Cowboys in that 3rd and 4th quarter. Final game of the preseason is now over, and let's get on to the cuts and transactions. On your screen now, you're going to see all the guys the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had to release. 22 guys in total, and none of them really jumped off the paper, and that is why they were released. Some of these guys didn't even play because the depth chart was so full at certain positions that they couldn't get onto the field and get playing time. The Buccaneers coaching staff do believe that they have made all the right choices in the preseason as determinant in who to keep on this roster and who to release. Now let's take a look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers regular season starting lineup. Jameis Winston is your starting quarterback for the Buccaneers, and hopefully he can lead us to the playoffs in the first year under Bruce Arians. The Buccaneers coaching staff still have high hope in this Bucs defense, and this is their starting lineup. Let's move on to special teams now, as Matt Gay will be your kicker on kickoffs and will be your kicker on kicking field goals attempt, This is going to be a tough season for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but if they call all the right cards and make all the right plays, they could be looking at a potential playoff spot in the NFC. Our target goal is 4 wins, and the video is coming to an end, so I will see you guys later.